So thank you very much, audience, for the opportunity for me to present my research, my PhD journey, actually, because it is include a emotional thing and include more than just a learning process. For me, it is also how can I contribute to our beloved Indonesia. So my research is about improving the coverage area of drinking water provision by using well operate and transfer and an institutional analysis. This presentation is divided into 7 parts, but I will take my time to speed it up because we have only 10 minutes. So the introduction is infrastructure, especially the public infrastructure, not merely about the infrastructure itself, but also involves the decision making, involves the power course, and that's why my research question is the main research question I separate into 3, and at the end, because I want to contribute as my objective presented the previous slides, the last research question about how can the preparation of build, operate, and transfer can help improve the coverage area of drinking water supply, because we know that in Indonesia the pipe water is not drinkable. Yes, the case is divided into 3. This urban area, more from Tangerang City and Tangerang Regency and the western part of Jakarta. The research objective, as I present to you, is to develop the guideline for the institutional actors or decision makers to prepare and finance the drinking water infrastructures. This is the whole picture from the upstream to downstream of the infrastructure, how they pick the groundwater from the rivers, how they treat that, and how it's distributed to the people. I divide this segment into 3, input, throughput, and output. This is what happened. They get the raw water from the river like this, and there is a financial performance, there's capital expenditures, operational expenditures, the tariff for drinking water, and this is what happened. Sometimes I never found myself that drinking water, the pipe water in Indonesia is drinkable until today. This is the governance concept. This is our public hierarchy, or there is civil networks, there is private market or competitive market. I put it in triangle. And this is our regulation. And I try to manage how actually the international best practice for the decision making, how they regulate the decision making. For example, in the Netherlands, then the decision making outcome will affect positively at the operational level. Okay, this is how it works. There's meta-constitutional. Sorry, back again. Okay, we skip that slide. When yeah, this is the slide. There's there's 4 levels. There's meta-constitutional. Let's assume this is our constitution. Then constitutional situation. There is the power discourse is there. There is a constitutional. There is a collective choice action situation, which is decision making. There is operational. My concern is in decision making. The 3rd level and the 4th level, and the collective choice, which is decision making and operational level. I would like to put the decision making as the independent variable, and the outcome of the operational action situation is the dependent variable. This is how I put. This is the power discourse inside the collective choice. There is a position, there is a net cost and benefit, and the potential outcome. From that point of view, I would like to compare how the rules inform, which is our regulation, and the rules in use, the decision making in practice, and the rules of expert. The rules of expert here is the international best practice that I say before. And the hypothesis, there is positive relationship between rules in use at the decision-making level that comply with international best practice following the guidance, and at the end, it affects positively to the improvement of the coverage area of drinking water. Yeah, my method is triangulation. I employ 3 cases. The operational cases in divide into 3. Following each cases, I do 11 observation, 8 open-ended interview, and a lot of minute of meeting and the document that I found during my field observation. This is the comparison at the operational level. We can see here that case 1, the yellow one, works not too good, not achieving the target that they decide at the collective choice. While the green one, they may surpass the target that they want to achieve contractually at the collective choice. While the red one, the Jakarta, my city, they never achieve it, although it's the investment running for 20 years. Yeah. One of the case, the yellow case, the green case, in Tangerang Regency, the water produced is really drinkable. That's the first time in Indonesia, as long as my research concerns, that we really can get the tap water, the flow to the pipe, that really drinkable. While in Jakarta, in the west part of Jakarta, they did not deliver the drinking water, and also in the first case, they not be able to deliver the drinking water. Yeah, that's why the coverage never increased because of the drinking water. As we can see here in the second case, in the green one, they even surpassed the target, contractual target, because the water is drinkable, the investment is proper, and the decision making is better compared to the other 2 cases. Yeah. Above the system performance, as we can see, the financial performance is far from the contractual targets. That's the thing. That's if the capital expenditures put in this graphic, and we will find the main cause is the lack of investment. They cannot make the promise to invest properly according to the contract. That's why the other two cases is a failure case. One, the middle case, the green one, is a successful case because of the investment is proper. Yeah, the tariff is just nitty-gritty. Yeah. See this graphic. This graphic is. Sorry. Yeah. The thing is, when the build, operate, and transfer finance the drinking water, there always strong relationship between low system performance and low financial performance. But before that, one may argue that the failure infrastructures because the investment only, but behind that there is collective choice outcome or the decision making before that really affecting the system. As we can see in this picture, as following my proposition, there is some of decision maker that really did not follow the rules. They make a branch for themselves, but remember, these branch and the rules may lead good result and the coverage of drinking water is improved, may not. That's why I compare these 3 triangles. And I found that the constitutional rules in the second case is comply more to the international best practice instead of the other 2 cases. That's how I presented before. There's meta-constitutional, there's constitutional and collective choice. the more we're capable to provide the constitution at the constitutional levels the rules, the collective choice decision making more close to the international best practice, surely it will improve the drinking water service. This is what my research question. The thing is, in the successful case is, there is a hierarchy there that Reagan involved in the tier of the sequence. There's preparation, procurement, and contracting. But he include another actor that possibly will contribute positively to the output of decision making. For example, there's a Reagan, there's an owner, customer, they included, and there's consultant, there's third party, and open class actor who can questioning the decision easily. While the other two cases, there is no sequence, preparation and procurement and contracting in one action situation. There's no sequence step, but the same actors. This is what these findings try to answer how, at the collective choice level, at the decision-making level, they cannot arrange the financial properly because of the number of the actor is the same. Is the actor is not diverse. This is the first finding. And each of the states in the second case, it is sequence step and sequence output, while the other case is not. That's why the performance at the operational level of the first and the third case is not works very well. And I come to the conclusion that how the actor interaction in the institutional setting to be modeled. Of course, my models show that smart rules, SRSP, smart rules, smart practice, the outcome at the operational level is positively, double positive. While in the case one, smart rules, but dumb practice, although we have proper rules, but our practice is dumb, there is a power discourse over there, that outcome is negative. And the worst case is the third case in my city, in the western part of Jakarta. Dumb rules and dumb practice, and outcome is both negative. So, in case 1 and case 3, the pattern formed that poor performance at the collective choice level, at the decision-making level, lead to the negative operational level. And the case, in case 2, show that the other way around. And as a previous slide, I answered that the actor can be modeled like this. The actor interaction lead to better outcome at the operational when the practice, the decision making, follow the rules, and the rules follow the international best practice. That's the most influential institutional pattern. Because me myself, I come from the technical background. This is the thing that I never realized before. That there is a powers discourse over the decision making, which is not easily recognized by observers. Then I come to answer the main research question that, of course, a proper PPP or build, operate, and transfer arrangement available for proper interaction, the outcome will positive require the decision-making interaction work properly following the constitutional rules, and the constitutional rules follow the international best practice. That's how it works. It's never go the other way around. But the most influential thing is, even without a rules, decision maker can do a better decision making process that lead to performance, better performance. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
I open this public meeting of the Doctorate Board of the University of Twente. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to express my welcome to all of you. My name is Petra de Weert Nederhof, and today I fulfill the role of chair of this committee, replacing the rector. I would like to give a special welcome to all people who are watching from Indonesia. And a special mention the candidate's mother. And he told me that she has been a very, very, very good stimulator of all his academic endeavors. And of course, his wife, who would be happy to have him back again next year sometime. And a special word of welcome for the young son, Alif, to witness the defense. Then, of course, a special welcome for the members of the committee. On screen, we welcome from Indonesia as well Professor Soekarno, from the Bandung Institute of Technology. We welcome Professor Berenschot from Leiden University, and Professor Georgiadou from the University of Twente, and Professor Bressos also from the University of Twente. And then there are two more people, members of the committee here in the room with us. And that is Dr. Lulovs, the co-promotor, and Professor Helderweg, the promotor. The two paronyms, of course, know their duty to support the candidate. Dear candidates, are you ready for your defense? Yes. Okay. Then I would like to ask Professor Soekarno to start the opposition. Professor Soekarno, you can unmute the microphone. Yes, and then please start.
Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to ask some of the questions based on your dissertation. The candidates, I have some questions. The first, that the grade or value given to evaluate the 18 aspects in collective choices were low or zero, neutral, 1, high, 3. And then the interaction combination score will be 0, 1, or 3. My question, from that 18 aspect, do you consider all aspects have the same weight for each item? And then my question, to get more objective for bidder selection, what is your opinion if you give weighting factor for each aspect in each state beside the score? Thank you.
Thank you. My highly learned opponent, Professor Indartmo. Of course, this is the approach to be selected during my PhD journey. We try to as concise as possible. That's how we the background of the approach. We pick the 18 aspect based on my literature review process, and we found that this that's actually the role of experts. And if I get you correctly, your question correctly, and this aspect at least show how the mode of governance represent the mode of governance if they're compliant, and it will provide the structure for collective choice, decision making. And decision making, although it have a 3 sequence, follow the international best practice, at the end will provide the environment for the operational actors to improve the coverage, if I get your question correctly.
Okay.
That's my answer.
My second question, do you have any information or could you explain why Moya as investor didn't comply the investment targeted and then it will affect to no expansion of coverage area achieved?
Thank you, my highly learned opponents. Basically, during my observation, I found that as a good researchers and good academic behavior of conduct, we have to I have to arrange a proper methodology to collect the data. Of course, sometimes I found that the proof of the why they cannot invest properly following their own contractual agreements, but as the main factor why the system performance not works following the contract itself. But however, academically, this I cannot put it properly in the academic methodology way, because I do found some papers that and the comments of the of the interviewee, they may not allow me to quote the part of the interview. They may not allow me to present the substances of the information that they tell me. But however, as institutional arrangement, the failure at the operational level supposed to be able to be addressed at the collective choice level. That's how the institutional way, institutional arrangement works. Thank you, your highly learned opponent.
Okay, my third question is about bidding process.
Yeah.
You know that in the city of Tangerang is only one bidder,
Yeah.
Moya.
Yeah.
And then in the Regency of Tangerang, there were 7 bidder pass, and 3 of them continue to the bidding.
Yeah.
The third in Panjaya, there were without bidding process, and then there is a direct appointment to Salim Group. What happened with this? Or you may understand about it. Why the first case and then the third case only one so give worse condition, and then the second it seemed better. Could you explain it?
Thank you, highly learned opponent, Professor Indratmo. Of course, as I mentioned in my first answer to your question, that institutional arrangement is the how I use the glasses to read the process at the collective choice level, and the actor who picks, I'm sorry with my terminology, who picks to use the collective choice level with one big collective choice action situation without sequence, without a clear sequence, may hint something at the collective choice level, may powers discourse, may the motive, or may the how they control the information processing, that lead to the collective choice rules that actually cannot provide a backbone or a new rules for the operational actors. To answer them furtherly, of course, as a good scientist, I cannot provide a proof, but institutionally, they're not compliant to the international best practice. Thank you.
Okay, I think my question is enough. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Professor Chair.
Thank you, Professor Sukarno, and that you are satisfied with these answers. Then I would like to ask Professor Berenschot to continue the opposition.
Dear candidate, thank you for a very interesting thesis on a very important topic. The provision of water continues to be a problem for millions of people worldwide, and thinking about, as you do in your thesis, about how the coverage of water provision could be improved is a very valuable and important topic. And in that light, it was interesting how this thesis discusses and evaluates the implementation of various PPP schemes aimed at improving this coverage of water provision, focusing on these three case studies that Professor Sukarno also already mentioned. I was also impressed by the way you managed to comb through the reports and documents from these PDAMs, from these water provision companies, and extract highly detailed data out of it and use it into your analysis. I thought that was nice. I liked a bit less the fact that you only undertook, or it says you only undertook 8 interviews. That seemed also very formal. And as a result, it seemed to me that the analysis was good at the numerical part, but not really much in capturing the dynamics that are not really easily described in numbers. And then I'm focusing here particularly on the dynamics of corruption. One of the reasons why I like your thesis is the coincidence that I did fieldwork research on the politics of Tangerang in 2013, so just before you started your fieldwork. And it so happened that one of the candidates in the elections then was Dr. Maju Kodri, who was then the director of the PDM that you studied, of Tirta Benting.
Yeah.
And he got his election budget largely from siphoning off the budget of this PDM. And he was later convicted for that to 3.5 years for jail. He lost the elections, to say. And also, the third case of your thesis, Pamjaya, was also mired in a corruption case involving 561 billion rupiahs in 2012. So, in short, and this we know also from other studies, there is this practice of kickbacks where the money intended precisely for sending to companies to improve the coverage of water provision is siphoned off and goes into kickbacks that companies give that money to the decision makers. Now, hence my question, I was surprised to see that the word corruption does not feature in your thesis, nor is there any explicit analysis of what conditions make it possible or not possible to engage in such misuse of budgets, particularly given that your thesis is focused on the efficiency of using these budgets. I would say that this malpractice, I would expect this to be a central feature of the thesis. So my first question is, why don't I find the word corruption in your thesis?
Thank you very much, Professor Ward or Pak Ward. Selamat siang.
Selamat siang.
As you know, because I know you know the urban area, the very solid urban area in Indonesia. That to answer your question, there's my theoretical frameworks is have what I would like say that not cover that the why question that you're asking me, that, and then the corruption, maybe what I can answer by using methodology is may look like a duck, it's quack like a duck, it swim like a duck, it's maybe a duck, but methodologically approach, I cannot answer that why question further to address certain corruption issue. Of course, I understand what your point, but after the selected methodology, after I even dropped one case to avoiding that my background, my engineer in me, cannot cover that topic, Professor Ward. That's how I stick to the frameworks. As long as the institutional arrangement hint that the duck is quack or the duck is swim, I will let my reader interpret themselves. I'm sorry to say using this word, but my methodology approach is cannot cover the corruption issue. Terima kasih, Prof.
Yeah, thank you for that. Actually, I kind of expected that you would say something like that. Although I didn't fully get I was surprised by the duck comparison. I didn't fully get that one, but I did expect you to say that indeed it's the analytical framework that you adopted that prevented you from focusing on that topic. But now, if you are pressed by me on this issue of corruption, and if you are a doctor, so you could reflect on your own theoretical framework. Given that it's called institutional analysis, that framework, don't you think it requires a little bit of broadening or reinterpretation to look at particularly what institutional characteristics foster corruption, or otherwise put, what the characteristics might prevent corruption? Given the importance of how much money is lost to corruption and hence the provision of water is imperiled by it, doesn't this experience call you for, like, how would you reflect on your theoretical model and maybe amend it to better incorporate this?
Thank you, Professor Ward. Terima kasih. And of course, in the next research, we possibly to do the further research about this, and without blaming to the theoretical framework that I am choose and the biggest information that I cannot show in my thesis, of course, in the necessary another research to really address this question, because my focus is the institutional arrangement and how the institutional environment comparing the institutional best practice, our rules in form and the rules in use, and the limitation of the research. Of course, I can only provide in my book that answer. If I move furthermore, perhaps my research also limited, and I only have 4 and 5 years to conduct further research to answer the why question. Perhaps I would like to say sorry if this thesis not answered the part yet, but of course in the future, if there is any change, there's any resource, I will like to continue with the new approach or new theoretical frameworks, Prof.
Thank you. I hope there's just 1 minute left, so I'll ask a very brief follow-up. So yes, that looks like nice if you would do that. But related to this, there is one case that was relatively successful compared to the other two. If you would now be forced by me to think about the issue of corruption, was this case also a case where there were mechanisms in place to prevent this misuse of money and this practice of providing kickbacks? Is there something in that successful case that helps us to learn about how to prevent corruption?
Thank you, Professor Ward. Terima kasih kembali.
Dear candidate, you have about 1 minute to give a nice answer.
Okay. Of course, that's how we conclude to answer the main research question, that the rules in use is the most affected the performance of operational outcome. It may that the decision makers in the second case is a smart despot, But the rules also, rules inform, provide for them a proper institutional environment to make them make a good decision and good decision-making process. That's all answer that I can give you in this limiting time. Thank you, Prof.
Okay, thank you for these answers.
Okay. Then I would like to ask Professor Georgiadou to continue the opposition.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dear candidate, I am not familiar with Indonesia's institutional context, but I accepted with great pleasure the invitation to participate in your committee because of my long-term research engagement in water provision, especially failing water provision in other world regions. What I really appreciated in your thesis, I was impressed by it, was how you constructed each chapter brick by brick, mixing conceptual frameworks from the social sciences with engineering characteristics of infrastructural water system. You are a civil engineer after all. I mean, if I oversimplify a little bit just because we don't have too much time, I think what overall you find in your analysis in a nutshell is that bad scores in IBP standards correlate with bad performance of water supply improvement, and good scores correlate with good performance. Now, I wonder whether this is a little bit too reductive of a general universal rule. What I learned from my research over the last several years regarding water provision is that water projects, big water projects, usually are successful when they manage to complement, to combine informal institutions with formal institutions. And I did not see any emphasis at all, except perhaps for some lip service, to informal institutions. And by informal institutions, in my research, we are looking at religious institutions like churches and mosques, concepts like the water is good, to a public, private, or common pool good, that water provision is a tribal moral duty, and things like that. Now, my first question is, to what extent is your finding, this basic finding that I just mentioned, applicable to other regions, for example, Eastern Africa?
Thank you, my highly learned opponent, Professor Yola. I would like to... Can you hear me correctly?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. I would like to address, this is the challenge since the beginning of my research to define the rules in use. For example, in Indonesia there is an adat law, there is a feudal system also, there is a combination of that. But to provide me a proper background, at least methodologically approach is clear in my position, I picked the rules in use as a decision maker make a pattern instead of if I make another effort to address the, especially in this urban area, the Jakarta is melting pot of Indonesian cultures, different feudalism form, different of adat law, different of religious approach. To use the word simplify may not correct, I'm sorry for that, but to simplify my approach during my limited time and resources, that's comparing the rules in use collectively. Although I understand the rules in use shaped by the perhaps the nutrition that they have by the decision maker, or they religious, or they another informal law, but at the end, this my methodology approach allow me to to compare, to provide a clearer backbone, if I can put it that way. That's my answer, Prof. I cannot hear you.
Can you please turn on your microphone, Professor Georgiadou? Oh, I think.
I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
I would like to focus on something that was very fascinating for me. Apparently, the Constitution of Indonesia, there's an article that states that the economy shall be organized as a common endeavor based upon the principles of the family system.
Exactly.
And this sounds very fascinating and very informal to me. So what I want to ask you next is, can we observe and how these principles of the family system enshrined in the Constitution empirically in the water sector in Indonesia?
Thank you, Professor Yola, my highly learned opponent. I would like to address this constitutional level that clearly state our economic system is built upon the family system, and or in Indonesian word is gotong royong. However, I found that at the rules on the papers, they may look like an ideal types, but at the end, at the decision making, so many things happen, so many powers discourse over there, and lead to another results. That's I think it's not only happened in Jakarta, it's also happened in another part of the world. Like you said before, during your research, you also found that rules in use, informal rules affected more in Africa, Eastern Africa, or another part of the world. However, that I cannot address properly that question because of my methodological approach that I pick, Prof. I think.
Okay. Well, let me ask one more question, Madam Chair. Do I have time for one more question?
Yes, you do.
Okay. Now, look, you mentioned, for example, that in the procurement phase, there are a number of positions that have to be filled, like a procurement supervisor, an auditor, a financial supervisor, etc. Now, would these people be hired based on merit or maybe based on family or tribal affiliation? So the legal thing to do would be to hire them based on merit, I assume. But maybe this legal approach is not legitimate. The legitimate approach could be to hire these important figures based on family connections and tribal connections. Can you comment on this, please?
Thank you, my highly learned opponent, Professor Yola. That's very nice question you gave me there. Of course, I fully understand. I even experienced myself that even in my second case, it's proof that the first region actually the father of the second regions. That's how to hint how they. But the result of the PPP BOT in that region is much better than other two cases. I would like to say what I'd like to say. That we can also put in another way around. Maybe the informal rules. Maybe the informal rules. It also can work well at the operational level. This is to say that the rules in use actually, the decision-making process actually can be improved, even though our regulation, the constitutional rules, not really adopted the international best practice. And what I would try to say here is there's two sides of the coin, of course, Prof. And to answer the question, my only answer is my methodology approach will cannot give me a free space to answer how far, how deep that informal powers discourse, for example, can affect the operational level to improve the coverage.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Just a small comment. I mean, even the leading nation, the leading democracy in the world, you have a president appointing his own family members in key positions. So they, although they don't have this principle enshrined in the Constitution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, my highly learned opponent.
Thank you, Professor Georgiadou. I'm almost tempted to say something myself, but I will not. I would like to give the floor to Professor Bressers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. May I start, dear candidates, with also giving my compliments for the work that you have achieved. I'm aware of the fact that you had to move far outside your comfort zone as a civil engineer, and I believe that you did so with a good performance.
Oh, thank you.
Question-wise, I would like to follow up on the discussion that you already had with Professor Gorgianu, and let me say this. In your conclusions, you say that you see a limited role for the official rules in form in influencing the rules in use. But still, you ask attention for these rules in form, since some of them might be influenced and might then have an influence on the rules in use. This brings me to an old problem that is often mentioned in law studies, namely, to what extent are rules and behavior interrelating? Formally, normatively, formal rules need to guide behavior, but can they do much more than codifying normal behavior, what is already accepted by the vast majority of people? And in how far can they change bad behavior? Now, after you've done this study, what are your ideas about the degree to which formal rules can indeed modify existing behavior that might be guided by rules in use, but maybe also are sometimes guided by plain self-interest? What is the role of official rules there?
Thank you, my highly respected Professor Hans Bressers. I would like to answer this question by using, like you said before, my transformation to, or my effort to be open-minded researchers, because my background, perhaps my behavior beforehand, and I'm just strict to see something from one point of view. But after this research, exactly, I'm enhanced I'm open-minded person. What I can say that about relation, how to what extent the rules inform affecting the behavior, at least based on my research and based on my observation in the field, if the obligation says, the rules in form says, during the preparation stage, the equity sponsor should not be there, it's help, Prof. For example, the other two cases, one successful case, they follow the rules in form. The equity sponsor not be able to present at the preparation stage, they only present after the winning the procurement. And while the other two cases, the action situation is actually only one action situation. They present before the procurement, and the rules did not compliance to the international best practice. That's how can I answer your question institutionally point of view. That's how it's affected. It's not supposed to the equity sponsor present at the preparation stage. It hint another direction. It's also hint that how the rules inform can affect the behavior of the decision makers. I may attempt to answer further my highly learned opponent, Professor Hans Bresses, but the limitation of the methodological approach and the theoretical approach, what can I say is the preparation when there is no equity sponsor there, following the rules, following the IBP, it works better at the proportional level also.
Thank you very much for your answer. I would like to continue with where you, in your answer, also hinted upon, namely the role of the international best standards. In the successful case, these international best standards were obeyed, and especially I think that from those, it was very important that that there was no blurring of the boundaries between the different stages, and that the different stages were indeed followed as separate stages. Now, you point to that as a main example, a main reason for the success. But later in your recommendations, you also mentioned that it might be important to adapt some of those recommendations to the local circumstances. In general, you could say, is it important always to adapt everything to local circumstances? On the other hand, there is this indication that this aspect of international best standards is multicultural, global, is true all over the world. So this division, should it be adapted to local circumstances, or is it a sort of universal truth? That puzzled me. Can you please solve that puzzle?
Thank you, my highly learned opponent, my respected, my Professor Hans Bresses. That question is during my trajectory. There is no such standard, international standards that really can adapt easily to a particular, let's say, country, particular culture. But what we can do best is to provide guideline, a guideline at least at the institutional environment for the actor to make decision or institutional arrangement. Learning from others may be tailored to our attribute of community, particularly in the case that I'm studying. It is the way I look at how to adapt the good internationally to our practice locally in Indonesia. And the most important thing is the rules in form that I study, that they really try, at least the whole rules itself, they really try to see what the best in the internationally, and they try to adapt to the system. Although in Indonesia, for example, the people in Jakarta may adapt the rules international, but people in Papua, for example, they may not understand particular rules, but the will to adopt, the will to find the best practice is, although it is have another challenge to translate into local condition, is another challenge for my research, to be honest. And unluckily, I cannot solve that. I just try to provide what best decision making happen all over the world, and try to adapt to our rules in use of decision process. And I also put the attribute of community and the biophysical condition at the Ostrom framework as the background variable, not affected the rules in use. That's how methodologically I assume how can I use the EAD properly in my research, Prof. I hope that I can answer you properly.
Yes, thank you for your answer.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you also, Professor Bresses, and then we are happy that there is also some time left for Dr. Lulos to proceed with the opposition.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dear candidate, in our meetings you showed eagerness to discuss the various mechanisms that are available to coordinate society. And for the sake of discussion and being brief, for the moment I indicate these as hierarchy, markets, and hybrid networks. PPP, BOT creates the latter, a hybrid network in practice. Obviously, and this should not be taken literally, with your feet on the table, the debate drifted sometimes to almost philosophical discussions about which of the three models might work best for water supply. While in your research practice, you remained the solid scholar, data and evidence-driven scholar that checks, cross-checks and rechecks data interpretation, if possible, by triangulation. Nevertheless, we did have these discussions, and gradually you connected another aspect and concept to the quest for effectiveness and efficiency in water supply. You connected to legitimacy and the legitimate public interest. And if you allow, Madam Chair, I would like to invite one of your paranymphs to step forward and read out loud Proposition 6.
Proposition 6. Proper institutional checks and balance are indispensable for effective, efficient, and legitimate public interest decision-making.
Thank you. Dear candidate, my question, how do you appraise the different modes of coordination with regard to legitimacy and the legitimate public interest? Does PPP BOT combines the best of both worlds, the worst of both worlds, or a fuzzy patchwork of positive and negative things with regard to legitimacy and the legitimate public interest?
Thank you. If allow, I would call my highly learned opponent, my beloved Dr. Chris, my mentor. Of course, during my journey as a PhD candidate, to being legitimate, if I understand your question correctly, to being legitimate and legal in positive law discourse each country is very important in the sense that although we understand there's a lot of rules in use, especially in Indonesia, legitimacy and the legal approach is acceptable even in the economic system of the country. And if I understand the question correctly again, that what we try to address with this thesis is at least the decision maker understand that the rules informed, the constitutional rules informed, should be legal, should be adaptable to the system, and the rules in use should be adapted to the rules that adapt legally to the system, and the rules adaptability to the international best practice. That's how I would like to conclude the literature discourse in my thesis.
If I might interfere right at this point, because you connect to international best practice, what would be the specific and distinct elements in that international best practice that you, in a constructivist way, created based on the body of literature? If you look at that, at that IBP index, and you focus upon safeguarding legitimacy and legitimate public interest, also referring to the question of Professor Berenschot, what would be the distinct elements in that IBP to look at?
Oh, the distinct element. I'm sorry to answer.
Thank you, Mrs. Beadle. And I would like to ask the candidate to stay where you are while I adjourn this public meeting of the Doctorate Board of the University of Twente. Ladies and gentlemen, I reopen this public meeting of the Doctorate Board of the University of Twente. Can I ask the candidate and his parents to stand before this table? The Doctorate Board of the University of Twente, represented by us, has examined your dissertation and the statements accompanying it and heard your defense. The Committee of Deans has decided, in accordance with Article 7.18 of the Law on Higher Education and Scientific Research, to admit you to the degree of doctor. I request the first supervisor to carry out the appointed task.
Under the authority assigned to us by law and on behalf of the Doctorate Board, I grant you, Nicco Plamonia, the degree of doctor and all the rights that are attached to this degree. As evidence of this, I present to you this diploma, in a minute, signed by the Rector Magnificus, the Secretary of the Graduation Committee, and your supervisors, and validated with the seal of the University of Twente. So here you are.
Dear learned Dr. Plamonia, let me congratulate you also on behalf of the university on your acquired dignity. From now on, you have the right to use the title doctor. This title implies that society can rely on the quality of your judgment, that you will act with integrity and transparency, and that you will communicate independently about the results and the social relevance of your work. Value the doctoralis as an honorable distinction and a well-deserved prerogative, but always remember the obligations imposed by it towards the scientific community and society. I would like to ask the promoter to give the laudatio.
Thank you very much, Madam Rector. Dear Dr. Plamonia, dear Nicco, or perhaps I should say Dr. Nicco, given how you always address your supervisors as Dr. Chris and Prof. Michiel. This laudatio and the personal congratulations it offers is also on behalf of Dr. Chris. We, Chris and I, have been companions on the challenging journey of your Ph.D. research project. To us, its roots lie with a mail by Hans Bressers on the 1st of November 2013. He wrote that there was a possible Ph.D. candidate from ITB in Bandung with funding and an already quite advanced research proposal. And given some of the legal content, perhaps this would be interesting to me. And so I took it on, but the project also required input from someone with knowledge on water management and governance. I think, Dr. Nicco, that we can agree that getting Dr. Chris on board already from the proposal stage has been of great value to making you ultimately succeed. Next, you experienced how your research approach was being reconsidered. To Dr. Chris and myself, it was clear that your proposed use of the analytic network process method, also known as ANP, was too mechanistic, quantitative to lead to a deep enough understanding of the underlying socio-economic factors in your study, especially considering the existing institutionally embedded desire paths and obstructive factors to proper decision-making. You went along with shifting from A&P to IAD. In hindsight, truly a leap of faith, but also fitting, I believe, to the passion that drove your interest. Already in your first mail, again in November 2013, you wrote about your hopes of redesigning PPPs to better balance public piped drinking water services with the need for private profit incentives to secure the funds to build and operate the grids. Your fear was that while private investments were crucial, opportunities for private profit-making would dominate to the detriment of most vulnerable fellow citizens, leaving them dependent on scarce and unsafe drinking water, such as from natural wells. So to dig deeper with IAD than was possible with ANP did serve your passion about the subject. Of all the challenges you faced across 4 years at CSTM and 3 years, just over 3 years from home, 3 clearly stand out. First of all, as was already mentioned, the challenge of shifting from civil engineering to social science, as by moving from ANP to IAD. Just recently, you reminded us of the difficulty you experienced in understanding institutional facts next to real facts, and that now you recognize institutions almost everywhere, in universities, even in religion, in PPPs, and also, of course, in the interactions when deciding about PPPs. Ultimately, the shift that you've gone through brought you to have 2 propositions which express how important it is, also, or maybe I should say especially for engineers, to understand institutional diversity. You could truly be an ambassador for the UT high-tech human touch adage. What also proved to be a major challenge was to shift from speaking and writing in Bahasa Indonesia to doing the same in English while doing research. In all honesty, it was a challenge to all of us. But perseverance prevailed, and ultimately there was Brian Spooner, our superb language editor. While one should always be careful not to be too modest, I think your final proposition displays wisdom. To tell a good joke in a foreign language really does take proper command of that language. And in stating this, I think you did raise a smile. Finally, perhaps your greatest challenge and indeed struggle of all was your passion for a prosperous Indonesia for all Indonesians to enjoy, free from malice and corruption. Again and again, you confronted Dr. Chris and myself with findings indicative of corruption. Look how these terrorists do not make sense. But again and again, we said that in scientific research, you mentioned it already, the duck test does not provide a sufficient evidence base. And as in Hanlon's razor, bad results are more often explained by ignorance and stupidity than by malice. Still, although your research wasn't targeted on disclosing corruption, in the institutional viewpoint that you propose lies an opportunity to limit the space for corruption and for mobilizing critique when rules are not complied with. And while needless to say, one thing is for sure, in all these 7 years, the closest you came to displaying signs of bribery is when you came by our offices to offer some of the delicious foodstuffs that your wife Putri had prepared. Truly compelling, but you never asked for favors. And so we have come to the end, the successful end of your journey. Again, congratulations on behalf of Dr. Chris and Prof. Michiel. Also, of course, to Putri and Alif, and to your wider circle of family and friends. It may have taken a while, but what ultimately counts most is a great result. But dear Dr. Nicco, can we please agree that in future it's just Chris and Michiel? Congratulations, Nicco, and the very best wishes for the future.
thank you, Professor Heldeweg. I would also like to extend my personal congratulations to you. I see applause there on the screen. We only met via the screen 2 days ago, and found out that we had something in common, because I recently also started to looking into the public-private partnership, of course from a different angle, but that was a very nice meeting, and I am happy that you succeeded in this way. Also would like to congratulate your family, your wife and your son, and also the brothers, the sisters and the brother who are watching. And I wish you a lot of success in your further career, which is first of all aimed at publications, I understood. Okay. Can I now ask you and your parnyms to go and stand where you were before? Before I close this meeting, I would like to tell you that there are some rules and regulations about how you leave this room, and those will be dealt with by the padel. She will, and the photographer, and they will tell you where to stand and how to go. And then, without further ado, I close this public meeting of the Doctorate Board of the University of Twente.
Congratulate him, you may not shake hands. You can congratulate him, you can go to the corona official. She will wait for you at the hall.
We don't need to whisper for saying congratulations. And take off your mask completely. This is even worse. Oh yeah.
To leave the room on time, so yeah.
Pressure is on.
Yeah,
Always.
pressure is on. Always.
Committee members, you can congratulate him. Again.
Okay. Congratulations. Okay, well done.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Prof.
Speak to you later. To be continued.
Maybe you two can stand in front of of next time where you sit.
Nicco, my warm-hearted congratulations to you, and also you well-earned deep bow.
Thank you very much. Partners, you can congratulate him and hand him over the diploma.
Waar moet hij heen?
You can return to your place over here. Yep. Yeah, they give him the diploma. Yes. Look at me. unofficial, official.
Yeah.
Maybe
So
you can now go.
now we will first make a group picture,
Yeah.
and then everybody
First
goes
a
up,
group
and you
picture.
can ask, you can say something to the
Say thanks to the.
So first the group picture, eh?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. So yeah.
So
leg je boeken weg.
for Mozart, you can stand on this side of flowers.
Stand between
Yes.
now my two professor.
This is okay. Yeah. And then group voorzitter nog hier is aansluiten.
Zoiets.
Fine. Yeah, perfect. Fine, can come forward. You come a little bit forward.
Just as close as we
Middle.
can. Nico.
And then, can you go a little bit backwards? A little bit more. Sorry, I'm pointing, but.
Ja, doe maar.
En dan als je naast het scherm, een beetje.
Ja, mag jij
Ja.
ook
And then people on the screen smile too, please. Yes, and hold that smile. Good. Make left, right. It's good. One more. Perfect.
Yeah?
Everybody can go to the Corona official, and you can stay here and you can say something to
Committee
the people on
members.
the screen.
Yeah.
I say something?
Yeah. Go a little bit closer, they can see you.
They won't have a problem with you standing close.
Stand here, so
Because they
the
are
camera
on
is here.
Yeah, yeah. So my highly learned opponents, thank you for attending this my defense, and especially for Professor Ward. Maybe we can speak Bahasa more when I go into Leiden. And my Professor Indras Moskarno, thank you very much for accompanying me. Professor Yola, and last but not least, my I respect you the most, Professor Hans Bresser, for receiving me as your PhD student. Thank you very much. My deep condolences.
Selamat Mas Nicco.
Terima kasih Pak War.
Oke,
Terima kasih Prof.
selamat Pak Nicco, selamat.
Terima kasih Prof.
Congratulations for you.
Yes.
And I hope we get.
Congratulations for me too.
Thank you Prof.
Congratulations, Nicco.
Thank you Professor Yola.
I hope we get to meet one day.
Thank you Professor Ward. Pasti.
Maybe kita akan bertemu di Tangerang, ya kan?
Ya siap.
To explore the corruption
We have to
happen
work
there.
on PPM Tirta Benteng together.
Siap.
Yeah.
We have to go.
So thank you. I will go, Prof. Thank you for being my committee. That's really my respect. My thank you for all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye for everybody. Yeah.